Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I will be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken, for them to share their experiences with my current students, and for that matter, anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. If you like what you're hearing, please drop a like, subscribe, hit 5 stars, anything you can do to help us out. It's greatly appreciated. So let's welcome today's guest, Dr. Elena Tayem McDonald. Hey, Doc, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Wonderful. It's amazing that you're a doctor now. Like, she's not a medical doctor. She is an EDD doctor, but it's still a doctor nonetheless. And it's just so amazing because I think, Elena, weren't you like one of the first ones to live, like we live in the same neighborhood? She literally lives around the corner from me. And I remember walking around the corner once with my dog and I'm like, wait, that's one of my students. And it's like, you kind of forget that we kind of go to somewhat of a neighborhood school. It's a magnet school, but nonetheless, and it's just fun to run into your students. And now she's all like grown up and an adult. It's just so amazing to have you here, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. No, it was amazing having to be able to grow up and you be around the corner to witness it too.
Aw, you're so sweet. So what I'd like you to do is to start off, please take a few minutes to briefly introduce yourself. Please include when you left the Don, where you went to high school, then college, post-college, and what you're currently doing now.
Yes, so my name is Dr. Elena McDonald and, grew up in Boca Raton, went to Don Estridge, was actually part of the first class that ever started at Don Estridge. So started there in 6th grade when it first opened, through 8th grade. So that would have been started there in 2005. So left in 2007, 2008. And from there, I went to Atlantic High School where I did the IB program. And then I went to University of Miami where I studied broadcast journalism and political science. So my initial dream was to be a news reporter. So I worked at WPTV. That was my first job out of college as an associate producer. Learned quickly that it wasn't for me, and that's okay. It's okay to learn that things aren't for you and to go through those
So
different challenges.
I would love to ask you one question. Could
Yeah.
you describe what an associate producer actually does? Because I've
Yeah.
heard producer, associate producer, but I'm not familiar with film and television that in-depthly.
Yeah, so we would work behind the scenes. So we were the ones that were putting together the shows. So for the show that I particularly worked on, I would help produce the cut-ins. So the Today Show would be going on, and then it would cut into local news that was happening here in our community. So I would put together those clips with the script and the B-roll, the video that you'd see on the screen,
Oh, wow.
and the graphics. So they would come up in between the Today Show for those that were watching here locally. And then I would help with the 11 a.m. show. So building the show, building the rundown, picking the stories of the day, writing the script for the anchors. And then we would
Hmm.
have guests on the show. So I would help, greet them, prep them for the show. So it was a lot of different behind the scenes work.
Wow, that's incredible. I never realized it was that in-depth and you did that much. Now,
Yeah.
does that differ because television is daily versus, say, a movie or something that may not be as produced regularly? Like, is that just that intense because of the type of program it is?
Exactly. Yeah, and things change. Like you could create a whole rundown for a show, and then something breaking happens, and everything that you worked on just goes in the trash. That's
Lovely.
that's how the news works as well.
Wow. You see, again, this is what's so interesting that we have someone who's worked behind the scenes and they can explain it to us because we all read the credits and we're like, executive producer, showrunner, this, that, the other thing. And I'm like, what do those things mean? Like,
Right.
obviously, the internet's going to explain it to me, but I'd rather have someone who actually did it and they can explain it in layman's terms so the rest
Right.
of us non-doers understand it. Well, that's incredible.
Exactly.
So then you said that really turned out not to be your bag. What was it about it that changed your mind that you were like, I spent my time going to college for this. Now I'm actually in the trenches going, maybe not for me.
Yeah, and it was really upsetting, as you can imagine, to think, because it's something that I wanted to do since I was in fifth grade. You probably even remember I was a huge part of Mr. Stansel's class,
I do. I was
doing the
going to
morning
say that. I
announcements.
remember you doing the morning
Yeah,
announcements. Yes, of
yes.
course.
And I loved it, and I loved it in college. So it was really getting into the real world. And it's funny because even though I did different internships in college too, a lot of anchors and reporters that would shadow would say to me like, "Hey, Elena, like, do you really want to do this?" Like,
Oh my God.
and I'm like, "What do you mean? Do I really want to do this?"
That's
So
why I went to college.
but it's because they weren't totally happy and fulfilled. And it's because, you don't get paid a lot. You're working crazy hours. It takes you away from your family, that work-life balance.
Right.
And
Very
for me,
important.
yeah, yeah, it's huge. And like when you're young, you're like, oh, it's fine. Like, doesn't matter. But then
Then
like, I'm
reality
like,
hits in. You're like,
in
wait, I want to
reality,
buy a
yeah.
car. I have no money. I want to buy a house. I have no money. And I'm working 90 hours a week. Like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, or I want to, go to this family member's birthday party and no, I have to go to bed because I have to wake up at 2 in the morning. So,
Yeah, I've
um,
noticed that with some of the reporters that I follow for my New Jersey Devils, and one in particular, she was talking about how even during the holidays, the Christmas holidays, she hasn't been home in like 3 years, and she
yeah,
finally was able to go home, and they videotaped it, and everyone lost their minds, and I'm like, wow, you don't realize the commitment, and even like you said, when you do an internship, you don't realize the commitment until you're full throttle in it. And yet,
yeah.
many of us go to college for all these years thinking this is what I want to do. And then, unfortunately, it didn't work out. So, then how were you able to pivot from that? That's incredible that you're like, all right, this didn't work out, but it's not like Elena is living in her parents' proverbial basement being a bum doing nothing. So, then
Right.
what was the pivot? How did you go, okay, now what?
So something that I learned while working there is that a lot of the guests that would come on the show, they had like a PR or communications person that would
Hmm.
pitch to us
Yeah.
the different segments. So I was starting to talk to them, and they'd come and be like, "Hey, like, what do you do?" And I would find out that a lot of them actually used to be me. They used to be, producers or reporters working for the news, and then decided to go into more of a PR, marketing, communications route. So
Nice.
that's what I pivoted to, and I started working at the George Snow Scholarship Fund, which it really is incredible. What I'm doing now and how it compares to that. Like, it just shows that everything does happen for a reason.
Of course. It
Um,
trained you.
yeah, exactly.
It trained you for the next job.
And well, I've always done so many different things. I've never just had one job. So,
No, you were always doing. Even when I would run into you from time to time when you'd come home from college or after college, I'd see you at your parents' house. We're walking the dog as usual, and I'd be like, "Well, what are you up to now?" And you're like, "Well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing the other thing." And I'm like, "When do you sleep? When is fun time? Like, Elena, come on!" And you're like, "Nope." You always had like your nose to the grindstone. You always were that hard worker, so it wasn't surprising. But again, like the question I'm going to ask you later, like, what was your downtime? I never got like you had any. I'm like, how does this girl stay awake? She's always doing something. It's incredible.
yeah, no, downtown doesn't really exist. It does, it's not a,
Sorry
it's
to hear
not a
that.
thing. But that's how I live. But
Right.
yeah, but to rewind, just to kind of like put things in perspective, when I very first graduated, I started working at the Boca Resort as a concierge,
Nice.
and that's actually where I met my now husband.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Congratulations. 3 years,
thank
you were
you.
saying. That's incredible.
3 years that we've been married. Yeah. So we met there, and then I got the job at WPTV, but I continued to work at the Boca Resort during all my different jobs that I had. So while I was, which was even crazier because I was working 4 a.m. Um, to noon, and then a couple days I'd go into the resort and work from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So yeah, so downtime
Wow.
didn't exist.
This
So
is a true worker, ladies and gentlemen. Did you hear the hours that she was telling you? And that's insane. We all need sleep and eat and downtime. She had none of those. That's just
no.
so incredible. Now, did you ever feel like working at the Boca Resort that perhaps someone would come in and notice you and try to help you in some vein? Or did that ever happen? That someone's like, why are you doing this? Wouldn't you rather work here for me? Like, did that ever happen?
It actually that did. Now that you're saying that, I haven't thought about that in a while. But I would meet different people that would have different opportunities, or were like new to Boca Raton and were seeking advice and things like that. But it was just such a great experience to work there because it really taught me a lot about hospitality
Yes.
and customer service.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something that everyone can use, doesn't matter what job you end up doing. And and there could have been the possibility to grow. There's a lot of growth opportunities at the Boca Resort too, but I knew that wasn't for,
Yeah,
because
it wasn't
hospitality
for
is
you.
also not a great schedule. Also involves
Yeah, that's the
working all the
problem
time.
with hospitality. The hours are murder, and it's like you're constantly flipping your schedule. Sometimes your nights, sometimes your days, and it's too much. But yeah, I could only imagine the opportunities that may have arisen because of the quality of the people that are going there. It's not Motel 6, it's not an inexpensive place to go to. So you're
Right.
going to be with the high flyers. I did have another student, Gabe, who he worked there doing he would like drive the Ubers, but there was their Teslas, and then he would take all these high flyers around, and he would tell me, "Oh my God, so and so came in, and so and so came in," and I'd have these great conversations with all these people. I'm like, "Wow, what an incredible experience!"
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I loved working there. Just met a lot of cool people. Would run into people like Adam Sandler. Like, you never know
Nice,
who you're
yeah.
gonna run into.
Well,
So,
he
but
live
yes,
he has a place in town now, Adam, and because
yeah,
his mom lives here too, right? I think so.
exactly. Yeah, he's a local now.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see him on the basketball courts, all you middle school kids. Happy Gilmore, he'll be out there, and he'll still, in his old age, beat you at basketball. So then, how did you then get to? I remember once again, another time walking the dog, and there's Elena, and she's like, "Oh, I'm working across the street at Lynn University now," and I'm just like, "You changed jobs more than anyone I know. How did that evolve? How did then you get over there?"
Yeah, so I was working at George Snow and then also working at St. Gregory's Episcopal Church, which was right across the street, as well as the Boca Resort, all at the same time, which I know is again wild. And one of my favorite stories about that, and one of my mom's favorite stories too, is we had this UPS driver that there was one morning I was at George Snow in the morning and he dropped something off. And then that same afternoon I was at St. Gregory's and he dropped something off. And he literally did a triple take. And I was like, no, it's the same person. I don't have a twin.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So
Oh,
I was literally all just, in Meisner Park, St. George's across the street. So, but I started to realize that I wanted something more. So many people tell me how amazing it is to work at Lynn. I wanted to go back to school and get my master's. So this job came up to be the student success coordinator at Lynn,
nice.
and I decided to apply and went through a very rigorous interview um, panel. Like I feel like I interviewed like 3 or 4 different times. It was
Wow.
pretty wild. And then I got offered the job and worked there for over 5 years.
Oh,
And I
wow.
actually still technically work there. I still adjunct teach. I
Nice.
teach yoga there as well.
Oh, that's
So
incredible.
so I'm still very much active at Lynn, but helped run their student success program and help our students there that needed some extra TLC. Different case alerts would come up that students needed help, and we would be the ones to reach out and try to help get them back on track.
Nice. And then what led you to your current position?
So, yes, after doing 2 masters and a doctorate at Lynn, everyone kept saying to me, like, what's next? Like, do you see yourself
Right.
staying at Lynn? As much as I love Lynn, I feel like it takes a really long time to grow in higher ed. And I guess I'm not that patient because I was ready to
Bye bye.
ready to keep
Pull the
growing. I'm like,
ripcord. Time to
yeah.
go.
And one of my neighbors here in Boynton just happened to reach out to me about a position it shows to, nurture your relationships, network. And she texted me the job and said, hey, we're looking for someone to start our student success program
Nice.
here at the Community Foundation. And she's like, isn't that exactly what you do at Lynn? And I
Right.
go, yeah, that's
Kind of do
literally
that
what I
here.
do.
Right. Right.
And I was like, it's my passion. I absolutely love higher ed. I love college students. I love helping them.
That's awesome.
And so I interviewed with them and I've been with them over a year. Absolutely love it. I have an incredible team. So we provide scholarships to students that are here in Palm Beach and Martin County to go to college, whether it's traditional school or vocational school.
Huh.
And
Listen up, kids. This is the woman
yeah,
that's going to help you get free money to go to college.
yeah, yourcommunityfoundation.org. Our application's actually open
There you
right
go.
now.
Give it the free shout out. Exactly. Exactly. Come on, guys. You need it. This is what it's all about. College is expensive. There are people out there willing to give you money for free if you qualify. That is so
Yeah,
amazing. So,
yeah.
one thing you said, which I'd like to go back for a second. because I
Sure.
don't think people understand this. I remember this because a friend of mine's younger brother was trying to get a job working at, I believe it was even Miami-Dade Community College at the time, and he was just an adjunct. And it took him like 10 years before he could finally become a full professor. Like, I don't think people understand, A, how competitive it is, and B, how long it takes to finally get that job. So since
Right.
you work there, is it possible for you to go into that a little bit and explain why you were just like, this isn't going to happen?
Why isn't going to happen to for things to take so long?
Right, right.
Yeah, it's just it can be competitive, and it could also be people just stay there forever. Like
Right.
they
Because it's a
get
great
into it.
place.
It is. Dr. Weigel is the dean of the College of Education over at Lynn. She's been there forever. Our president's been there forever. Our vice president of enrollment man, like people just and a lot of them started at Lynn. Like my old VP, he actually went to Lynn as an undergrad.
Wow.
So it just shows that, yeah, he's been there since he's, 18 years old and now he's in his
Yeah.
40s. Like, so
It,
when you see things like that, you're like,
yeah.
it could take a really, really long
Really long
time.
time. Right. I don't want to be stuck as an adjunct teaching one class here, one class there, and then I have to wait till somebody either retires or, God forbid, dies to get a position. And nobody has that kind of time. Unless, of course,
Exactly.
it's your lifelong dream to be a professor. But, and you said you still do yoga classes and other kinds of teaching there as an adjunct, which is still pretty cool because you're keeping your name out there. And who knows, maybe something will open up in the future. And by continuing to stay there in some capacity, it may help you in the future. Like, if we could go back to you working at WPTV, you probably weren't thinking this is where you'd be now. So,
Right.
you never know what could happen. But I just wanted that explanation because I think a lot of people go, well, I want to be a college professor. And I go, I don't think you understand what's involved in that and how long it
Yeah.
takes.
And you
Many
have to be
people,
willing to be flexible too, because
yes.
I'm happy here. My parents are here.
Yep.
I'm not going anywhere. So if I did want to leave, I'd have to go to another university. And the
And that's
only
what
other one is FAU, and
Right. And
otherwise
that's
I'd
what
have
my
to go
friend
somewhere
said,
else.
that he's like, I would get offers to go to like Iowa State and all these places, but I don't want to leave Miami. I don't want to go to a cold place. And it's the same thing back to the television. I know a bunch of
Yes.
my friends or parents, friends who had kids that were around my age or a little bit younger. And the same thing. They go to like Dubuque, Iowa to go be a sports broadcaster because it was the only place. And then eventually they'd work their way into a bigger market, a bigger market, a bigger market. And then eventually you see them on the Miami television or you see them on New York City television. A couple of my friends from high school that happened. I remember there was a blackout in high school, blackout in New York City. And we're watching and the news comes on and it has the New York affiliate. And this guy I went to high school with pops on the television. And my wife is like, don't tell me you know this guy. I'm like, yeah, I know him. And she's like, how? I go, well, I went to high school with him and he must have been out to dinner and close proximity and nobody else could do it. So they just threw him on. And now all of a sudden he's getting his tasty taste of national news. Kind of like the lady from Miami, Michelle Kosinski. Did you know her or know of her?
No.
She was working in Miami when I lived in Miami way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And eventually she became a national broadcaster. I think she worked for Fox, CNN. I think she's located in London now. And she started off in Miami. So like Elena said, you got to put in the time to eventually become what you want, but it is grinding. It's not easy. Not everything is just like, oh, I want to do this, poop. It's going to happen. Wow.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you going into that. And
Of
thank you
course.
so much for, again, coming on and telling my students about your experiences because you have an inside track to what I think many people at this age would be thinking they want to do. And okay, then this isn't a question I have written down, but I just thought about it. Would you have gone in a different direction? Because like I asked this later. So if you could tell your eighth grade self something that may help you, would you maybe go back and tell them about what you said, how you went through this, you went to college for broadcast journalism, and then all of a sudden, like they say on Bugs Bunny, you made a left turn at Albuquerque. Do you think that you would have listened and maybe tried to go this route sooner, or you were kind of happy with how this went because of how it turned out?
I'm very happy. Like I said, I really do believe everything happens for a reason, and those skills that I learned in college and from working at WPTV helped set me up to who I am today. And a lot of my job too through the foundation is we do a lot of different storytelling to tell the stories of our scholars, so that more and more donors give because
Yes.
there's such a need for scholarships. So my experience was invaluable, and I'm very thankful for
Oh, that's
everything I've
awesome.
learned.
That's so
Yeah.
great. So I'm glad that that worked out in that way, in that vein, and it's not like animosity, like, oh man, I spent 4 years of my life doing this when I could have just gone this way. But yeah, like you said, you picked up and acquired a lot of skills that you wouldn't have had on any other way. Wow, that's a very mature way of looking at things. Oh my gosh. So with all of this education that you've acquired, I think you're the most highly educated person so far that I've interviewed, 2 masters and an EDD. Like, you win the trophy for most education acquired. Elena. So how did you actually get inspired for learning? What was that thing, that person, that moment? What was it that really got you to go, I like education?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was really blessed to go to really incredible schools. I started my journey at Murakami Park Elementary School in Delray as part of the IB program. And again, just like Don Estridge, I was part of the first graduating class when it very first opened as a little kindergartner till fifth grade. And I had really incredible teachers. I had teachers like, I'll shout them out if they happen to be listening. Miss Gray, Mr. Mercier, Miss Hodge, who actually is a assistant principal locally. Her now Mary maid is Miss Hargrove, and
Yes,
then to be able to, do you know her?
yes.
You do. She's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, she is.
Yeah. So like they just, made learning fun. And I think that's so important that your student, when you're little, that they start that, grow that seed, and then to go into middle school and, have you, Mr. Proper. I mean, like
Yeah,
each
you
year
go. I'll
one
slip you that
school.
$20 Venmo when we're done.
No,
Appreciate
it's true. No, you
it. I
always.
know. You wouldn't be on here if I didn't make an impression on you. I mean, come on. Let's go.
You really made learning fun, and that's so important. Otherwise, who wants to go to school if you
Exactly.
can't
And that's
have
what I tell
fun?
them all the time. I have to be here. You have to be here. I'm trying to make it as fun as possible. I'm not the spring chicken I was 20 years ago, but I'm still trying, and I still try to put it out there, the faces and the voices and, the smiles in the hallways and the, hey, how you doing? And, because you never know what impression you're going to make on a kid. I have so many kids this year and the last few years that, to be perfectly honest, I don't even know who they are, but they come up to me every day. Hey, Mr. Barber, how you doing? Hey, what's up? How you doing today? Like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was in high school and there was a teacher who, if you didn't have him, he just wouldn't talk to you. And I knew that. And one day I saw him in the hallway with a teacher I did have, and I was like, "Hey, Mr. So and So. Hey, Mr. So and So." My teacher was like, "Hey, Jeremy, how's it going?" And the other teacher just ignored me. And I turned around and I was
Mm,
like, "Hey, man, just because you ignore me doesn't mean I don't exist." And he was
right.
just like, "Whoa, that's pretty profound." I'm like, "Yeah, just because I'm not in your class doesn't mean I'm stupid either." And he was like, "Huh?" And I just walked away. And I'll tell you this, that was the very moment I said to myself, if I ever become a teacher, I will never ignore a student that says hello to me. If you
Yeah.
go out of your way, because how hard is it as a 13, anywhere from 10 to 14-year-old, to go say hello and talk to someone, an adult, that you don't even know who they are? But you just heard, well, he'll say hi to me. He'll have a conversation with me. I mean, I talk to a rock. I'll talk to anybody or anything. That's my problem. But reality is, I'm not going to deny anyone because you never know what that little experience is going to change, what that's going to do for that person. And like I've said so many years, like it's not the things that we don't remember the things that we do for people. People remember the things you do for them. So it's important. I can't tell you how many times I've done the podcast and a kid says something to me and they're like, "And you did this for me." And I'm like, "Man, I don't even remember." And they're like, "No, I will never forget that." And I'm just like, "Well, I'm glad I was there for you. And thank you for remembering. And I'm sorry I don't, but I'm glad that it made an impression on you." And these are kids. It's middle school. It's the last bastion of fun. High school starts reality. And let's have some fun. Let's enjoy. I get it. I'm not tested. I have more latitude and free time than most of the other teachers, but it doesn't have to be rote and routine and ridiculous either. So we all have our moments, and you got to seize the day, carpe diem, when they happen, because you never know, like I said, how you could change somebody's mind. So,
Yeah.
was there an aha moment connection that teacher, maybe the ones that you mentioned that you may think of, that you were like, wait, I never had this class, but this teacher made the light bulb turn on, and you were like, whoa, I kind of like this broadcast journalism thing, Mr. Stansel?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll never forget, like at Murakami, we had the TV studio club, and Mrs. Cash was her name. She got us involved, and you could only do it when you were in fifth grade. And I was like, I don't know, in like first or second grade. And I was like, I want to do that when I get to fifth grade. And once I started doing it, I loved it. And then, got to middle school and got to have, be in Mr. Stansel's class for all those years.
Yep.
And I think that's so important that, especially for like your students too, is, the whole career readiness. I think to be able to kind of know what you want to do, even if it's not exactly what you end up doing, just like me, but learning those skills early on is so crucial.
Yeah,
I feel like
because
I was,
you carried those all the way to today. I mean, those are things
yeah.
that you've used, but I don't think everyone sees things as clearly as you do. I don't think everyone I'm serious. I don't think everyone has the focus, the drive, and I'm not saying it can't evolve. You just seem to have it, like you said, first grade, I want to do that. And by fifth grade, guess what, everyone? She was doing it. So to me, that's amazing that you've always had the drive, and you saw something, you had the goal, and you're like, all right, how do I do that? I want to do it. How do I do that? And that's amazing. And that leads me to my next question of, what was that quote that kind of got you to move towards those things? What was the quote that you lived by that like helped you along to make these dreams a reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's a super simple quote, but it goes back to my childhood. One of my favorite books that my parents would read to me was The Three Little Pigs. And, the little pig that built the house with the
The house of
bricks.
straw, a house of brick, house of mud.
Yeah. And the one that didn't get destroyed, his quote was, hard work pays off, because he put in that extra effort to make the sturdier house so that it wouldn't blow down. And I would yell out the window every morning to my dad going to work at Home Depot, and I'd yell out to him, hard work pays off.
Hmm.
And it's true. There's no shortcuts, especially nowadays, with ChatGPT and everything. Like those shortcuts, they're not worth it. Hard work really
No,
does pay
you're
off.
not learning anything. You're
You're
wasting your
not
time.
learning.
And it's
Yeah.
because I didn't prep her for anything, but that's the last line in my opening. Anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off, and this woman is telling you point blank, without hard work, she wouldn't be in what I'm assuming is her current dream job, which she
Yeah.
got herself from all this hard work, picking herself up by the bootstraps. And, you know, so, can I ask you a little bit more of a personal question? Since I know that your dad is from a foreign country, how was that growing up in America with an American mom and a foreign dad? Like, was your dad? Did he give you like a different perspective of what it was like growing up in his country, or because I have a lot of kids who are of Indian descent who have done the podcast, and they all say
Mm.
the same thing, that the library was their source of original education. And they always say, well, I'm sure you've never heard this before. And I go, library. And they're like, how do you know that? I go, because it's a common theme. That's where the free education is. And in their home country, you had to pay for it. Now it's free. So, like, was there a different perspective perhaps that your father gave you since he was not born in the United States?
I think his work ethic is something that he's really instilled in me, and seeing, and learning everything that happened to him when he was in Lebanon. He escaped Lebanon during the Lebanese Civil War. Was living during a time where there was bombings going on. His elementary school was bombed. He wasn't able to complete his education. So for him to teach us just how beyond lucky and blessed we are to live, where we do in beautiful, I, as grew up in Boca Raton, and
Yes.
to be able to go to such incredible schools. Um, I think he really helped us to understand like how life is precious and can be taken away.
This is not an acquired thing, ladies and gentlemen. This is passed down by generations. Her father
Yeah.
is the hard worker, and Elena saw this and then said, well, I've got to do that too. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
Like, some people, they acquire it because they realize, look, if I don't work hard, I'm not going to get what I want because my parents aren't just going to give it to me. And other people, they learn by watching, like you see something and you're going, well, this is what my dad does. He gets up every day. He's working a job. He's working real hard to provide us this life so we can live in this beautiful town, in this lovely home, and I get to enjoy myself. And now, as an adult, I can look back and go, with his tutelage and showing, not saying. There's a difference between telling someone you have to work hard versus
Yes.
someone getting up every day and doing the job. And that's when
Right.
you really acquire it.
Right. Yeah. Even in writing, right? They always say, "Show, don't tell," and that's in life too.
Yes,
That we
of
were able
course.
to learn by my dad's example, and to see him and my mom really create their American dream of buying their own home, owning their own home, and working super
Raising two
hard,
kids. Yeah,
raising two kids. My mom's a teacher. My
right.
dad's been at Home Depot for over
Ever.
30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
forever.
And, taught me the value of a dollar and saving
Very
up. And,
important. Yeah,
now
and
my
here in
husband and
Boca
I own
Raton,
our.
that's not really a message that's sent out very much to these kids because they come with silver spoons in their mouths. So getting that is pretty incredible. The fact that the
Exactly.
value of a dollar is so important.
Yeah, and I started working very young. I was babysitting at the age of 12 for the
Nice.
neighborhood kids, teaching piano, tutoring. I had to work for, if I wanted to buy something, I had to work for it. And,
I know
you
that story oh too well. My parents got married very, very young, and they were like, if you want more, go get a job. And I was like, okay, here I go, walking dogs, mowing lawns, raking leaves, shoveling snow, whatever it is that I could do until I could get a regular job at like 15, 16. But yeah, hard
yeah,
work teaches you a lot. And, having parents showing you that. But then again, growing up in Boca, you could have had animus. You could have had animosity towards your parents. Like, why can't you give me more? Instead, you went the other route and said, okay, I got to do hard work. I'll do hard work and I'll get what I want. That's just
yeah.
incredible. That's incredible. So, going back to education, what would you say was your most challenging educational experience and how did you overcome that challenge?
So the International Baccalaureate program at Atlantic High School was extremely challenging. And I knew that going into it that it was going to be hard, but it was way harder than I even expected.
Wow.
And it pushed me to, different limits, to staying up at all hours of the night, getting work done.
Listen up,
Um,
kids. This is your
yeah.
future talking.
And I would do the opposite of other people do, like staying up super late. Instead, I'd go to bed early, and then I'd wake up at like 3 in the morning and
Oh
start
my gosh.
studying and go to school. That
Wow.
was my method to my
Well,
to
hey,
my
whatever
study.
worked with your madness, hey, it worked. Obviously, it paid off. I mean, look at you. You're so successful. So, again, but like you're saying in not so many words, there's not one right way. There's not one wrong way. You just have to figure out what way works for you. And you did.
Exactly.
You went and found out the Elena way, and it worked out pretty well. So, it's nice to hear that there are different ways to do things and still be successful. That's amazing.
Right. Thank
So,
you.
oh, no, no, please. Thank you for sharing. So, as I like to throw in some new questions from time to time, was there ever a question that you wanted to ask me that there was something you wondered about for me when you were in my class? Like, hey, what about this?
So, I mean, I always wanted to know like how it all started. Like, how did you decide to become a teacher and to still be teaching now? What inspires you and drives you to?
Well, when I was a little kid, I was told because my grandmother unfortunately passed away before I was born, but I was told that she was a teacher. And then my mother went to college and she became an art teacher. And then my mother decided that she really liked teaching. So just like you, my mother got a job working at a community college in New Jersey, and they too helped her get her master's and her PhD. And then eventually my mom worked at a university. So my mother has worked K through college, I guess is the way you
Wow.
would say it. And there was always something inside of me that I would look at certain teachers that I did like as well as that I didn't. And I would try to find ways like, oh, if I was a teacher, I'd do it this way. And like the story where I said, with the teacher who wouldn't acknowledge me, I always wanted to teach the way that I learned because I knew there had to be a ton of little Jeremys out there who did not learn in the traditional sense. Not that I was incapable of learning, but in the 1970s, the coolest thing we had was an open classroom. They didn't really understand the kid with ADHD that he could run around the room and still get the answers correct. They just wanted me to sit down, not say anything, not be the last kid to put down their pencil. Lottie Sohn, my kindergarten or first grade teacher. And oh, yeah. And so it was just something. And it was also, to be honest, I think it was something that I had to prove to myself. And if I really must do a deep dive and you're making me say something, I was thinking about this on my bike ride a while ago. Like when I first started teaching gifted, which is what I taught basically my whole career, it was more of like I had to prove it not to someone else, but I had to prove it to myself. I had to prove to myself that I was smart enough and I could do this and I could teach the smart kids and I knew what I was talking about. So in a way, it was proving a lot of people in my life wrong who were naysayers telling me, are you sure you want to go to college? Are you sure you can do this? Like my whole life was obstacles. I don't know if you remember this, but I had 6 concussions before the age of 12. And I wound up then having a bunch of learning disabilities. It took me longer than the average bear to learn how to read. I still can't spell worth a hill of beans, but thank goodness for spell check. And like, I felt like my brain had to reprocess itself many, many times. Like I'm a computer, I needed to be rebooted. And I guess a lot of it was I wanted to prove the naysayers wrong who didn't think I could do it. And now approaching almost 30 years of teaching, looking back at my career, I have proven it to myself, and I need to say it out loud because we keep these things to ourselves. And I came to this epiphany on a bike ride one day, and I was like, you know what? This was to prove it to me that I could do it, that I was capable, and I am, and I'm a very capable person. I mean, it's hard to come out and say that, and I'm not tooting my own horn because anybody who knows me knows I'm not a big horn tooter of myself. You know, I was embarrassed even when Elena was mentioning me as one of the teachers that helped her. So you know, we all have our tribes and tribulations, and we try to do these things and come out on top. And, you know, it's, again, having this podcast is like the most humbling thing of my career to have wonderful former students like yourself come on and talk about their experiences. And let's be real, I really only knew you for 8th grade. That's 180 days, not counting you being absent or testing or whatever. So let's say maybe 160 days, maybe 150 days. And here we are all these years later. You're on my podcast telling me your story of how you got here. And that's what keeps putting a smile on my face and coming back because I've been so fortunate to teach at this wonderful school in Palm Beach County, Don Estridge High Tech Middle School. And I've had kids go to every Ivy League school. I've had them go to every secondary, whatever's below Ivy League. And knowing that I was a part of them and they want to come on and thank me and talk about, you know, their stories. And that is the most gratifying thing I could have ever hoped for. Because 30 years ago, podcasting didn't exist. I never knew that this would happen. Speaking of which, there was a story from my first year of teaching. I was a floater, meaning I didn't have a classroom. And I was in the teacher's lounge and I was grading papers. And this one teacher is like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm grading essays." Did they still have the blue books for essays when you were in college?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I miss those blue books. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I used to use them for the kids in middle school back in the day when I first started 30 years ago. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "They're gifted. They need essay tests. You know, I can't give them multiple choice, or as I called it, multiple guess. They could figure it out. They're smart enough." And she's like, "It's not like it's going to matter. It's not like anyone's going to remember this. And you'd be lucky in 30 years if anyone remembers you." Well, I have almost 40 podcasts in the can that prove you wrong, lady. So again, it's a prove thing. It's for me showing people they are wrong. You know, you said those words, they meant something to me, and I want to show you I will continue to make a difference in young adults' lives, and that's what I'm good at. You know, I'm good at connecting with people and bringing things to a level that they understand. And it doesn't matter how many times I have to do it because my job is to teach you. And until you get it, I have not fulfilled my job. And I guess I'm crazy when it comes to those things because most people give up. Most people are like, they don't get it. Just move on. No, this is their education. It doesn't matter whether I thought they got it. I tell them all the time, don't leave this room without asking a question. Don't leave this room not understanding what today's lesson was about because the only one that's going to be hurt by this is you. I'm the teacher. I know this stuff. So I guess I just do things in a much different way. But over this career, it's seemingly has paid off in people like yourself and all the other people who've come on the podcast and the people who haven't. So we were discussing this earlier, and the question comes up now is, how did you unwind with all this difficulties, the course load, the work, what's Elena time like? Like when is that? Does that exist? And B, what is it?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember someone in college asking me the same question, and he was like, "Elena, what do you do like in your spare time, like when you go to your dorm?" And I was like, "I'm never in my dorm. I'm like, I'm
Right,
literally in my dorm to sleep, and
right.
that's
It houses all my
basically
stuff
it."
in my bed. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, I'm always, if I'm not in class, I'm having lunch with someone, or I'm at the gym, or I'm at a, club meeting, or, or I was in the
Wow.
TV studio at, I was like doing different, producing different shows on campus. Like there was always something going on, some activity.
Right.
But it's because I loved it. There was nothing that I was doing that I didn't enjoy, and I wanted just to keep building those skills and building my resume. But now, as an adult, I do have a much better work-life balance of, but my number one thing is I love spending time with my family, my husband, my parents, and I love yoga. So those are really, and I love to read. So those are my things that I like to do
Well,
to
yoga in
wind down.
itself is going to ground you. It's going to put you in that back to normal place when everything's chaotic. And well, apparently if you do it right, like I'm not the greatest yogi in the world. I've tried it. I will say though, some of the most sore I've ever been from any workout, I would have to say it was yoga because you're stretching yourself in a
Really?
way that you're just not used to doing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, if you haven't done it before, your muscles are like, hey, what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah. Namaste. I don't think so. Namaste. Like this hurts. What are you talking about? Like I'm not a goaltender. I can't do the splits on the floor. Like my body parts don't do that. I mean, I know that this is techniques that have been around for thousands of years and work, but like you said, when you haven't done it before, it's like whoa. And then I can't even imagine Bikram yoga and throwing in like the 110-degree temperatures. Like no thanks. Heat and I
No,
we
no.
dry heat and I don't go well. That's why I only lasted 2 years in Arizona. I met my wife and I was like, let's go back to the humidity. That's what I'm used to. Like it's just, oh my gosh. So,
Yeah, no, that's not for me either. I
oh,
don't
good,
like when
good.
it's too hot. Yeah.
So when sorry, excuse me. So when adversity comes your way, do you have like a set plan? Do you have like, are you the sit down and like one of my friends is always like, write it down on a piece of paper, have the pros and the cons. Like, how do you sit through adversity? Like when, again, you spoke so eloquently of TV station just didn't work out for you. Were you just like, okay, we're going to pivot to this? Or did you like, are you the write down kind of person? Are you analytical? Like, how did you deal with adversity? Like, what is your technique? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think pros and cons lists are definitely, I'm a list person. I write everything down. And then I think talking it through with people that you trust and figuring out like really what is best for you and what's most important to you. And I think I learned while working at the TV station, actually like had just, started dating my now husband, and like I said, like, I was living at home and I was like, I feel like I'm missing out. I feel like I'm missing out on my life. And I'm not happy. I'm not sleeping like a normal person. Um,
Very important. Sleep is like more important than food sometimes.
yeah, and I was like, this isn't impacting me in the right way. So it's really prioritizing and figuring out what's most important to you. And I think the older you get, the more you realize the most important thing is your family, and there
For
really
sure.
is nothing,
For
nothing else. Is those relationships that you
Were,
build, and
were you
everything
also
else.
feeling like you may have like dug yourself a too big of a hole or ground yourself down too far? I don't know what euphemism or analogy to make, but was was there like something that you were just kind of like, yeah, I've just missed out on how many years of sleep, or my family has taken a backseat? Like, was there a specific moment that brought you to that, or was it just a culmination of everything?
I think it was the culmination of just being insanely sleep deprived.
It
Because I
sounds
worked
like it.
there, I worked there, what, 6 or 7 months, and it got
Wow.
to a point where I'm like, this isn't
Wow.
healthy.
Right. And
And
yet these are people that do this job for years on end. So I can't imagine you get burnt out in 6 or 7 months, and some people have like
yeah,
years of careers.
and
Wow.
everybody else wasn't happy. So I'm like, well, if I'm
Wow.
in
So
my 20s and I'm not happy, and these people have been doing this forever and they're even more unhappy, what am I doing?
well,
And
but
that's where it was time
that's why I
to.
want you to talk about these things, because these young bucks that are listening to this podcast, they don't know anything. They're like, well, I want to be on TV. Well, this woman is explaining to you what it was like and the amount of work and effort that went into being on television and how hard it was. So again, like I said, I really appreciate you opening up and telling these things because most of us are just like, I want to do this. I want to be an astronaut. Well, you have no idea the amount of science and time and degrees and, flight school and all of these things that are involved. And, obviously when you're a little kid, it's easy to say, I want to do that. But then once you point your compass in that direction, so again, having all of you guys on the podcast talking about your experiences hopefully helps these kids to understand, yes, it's one thing to have a goal, but here's the reality of achieving it and what had to be done to do it. And especially for yourself, someone who achieved it and went, this isn't it. I've wanted to do
Right.
this since first grade, and then I did it as an adult, and it didn't work out. And again, I think that's also the most important part of this podcast is talking about our failures. We learn from our failures, not as much from our successes. Like I was saying earlier, when you're nice to someone, they remember the nice. You may not,
Hmm.
but you remember the mean. You don't necessarily remember the nice. But when you dole it out, you don't either. And telling experiences, I think, is a nice way of giving back to people, which apparently has been a majority of your adult working career, and telling people about it. And I love when the kids can come on and talk about their, failures, not because, they failed. No, because we all fail. How do we deal with adversity? What do we do? How do we put our shoes back on, pick up our big boy and big girl pants and go, okay, life doesn't
Right.
stop because I failed, but how do we fix it and what do we do? And it's just so
Exactly.
greatly appreciated. So
Yeah, you have to have that resilience, right?
there it
Otherwise,
is.
you.
Resilience. What a great word. Bounce back. Exactly. So, was there something that you learned about Don Estrich perhaps many years later after you left its hallowed halls? Like, was there something maybe in high school you look back and go, wait, I learned that in Don Estrich, or college perhaps, that Don Estrich taught you that you were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize until this very moment?
I would say something that Mr. Stansel would always say, and that has come back to me time and time again, is that everybody has a story.
Mm,
And he was really great at teaching us that. And it's true, like in everyone's life, you want to be able to tell those stories and celebrate those stories. And that's something that has stayed with me from Don Estridge. And I think also you don't realize what you have obviously until it's gone. And I had
mm,
so many great teachers at Don Estridge, like you, like Miss
mm.
Ambergy. I still remember.
Yes.
There was Mr. Stansel, like certain people that really just um, were like cheerleaders for us. And
Yes.
when you get to high school, it's not always the case. And college too. You want to find those people that are going to be in your corner and be your mentors and to be your forever friends potentially, and to think that
Yes.
I'm still connected to people like you and
Hmm.
there's other teachers that I'm still connected to, and it's a really amazing full circle feeling.
Oh, that's so awesome. And it's like, again, these kids don't understand these things because they're in the throngs, whatever the word is. They're doing it right now, and they don't quite understand it. And again, we look back and go, we all have mentors. We all have people who helped us. We also have people who tried to get in our way and stop us. Like
Hmm.
I was looking at something, and it reminded me of my student teaching. The woman who was my coordinator for student teaching on the last day. My last observation tells me, no, I don't think you should be a teacher. I don't think you should do this. And before I literally unloaded on this lady, my cooperating teacher, who never said anything, was like, this guy has never missed a single day. He even came on the day when he was supposed to start, and there was a snowstorm, and it took him 2 hours to get here. And I stupidly didn't call the man to tell him school was canceled. He showed up every day, and today he has a 102-degree fever. But because this was his last observation, he showed up. And again, that's another person that's somewhere deep rooted in my mind, and I'm going, I proved you wrong. You tried to tell
Yeah.
me that I couldn't do this, and I have almost a 30-year career to prove you wrong. And I guess that's
Right.
for me. I've always been the kid, the adult who had to go back and try to prove the naysayers wrong. Not necessarily like in the forefront, but just say, look, I accomplished what I set out to do, just kind of like yourself. The only difference is my road was kind of like a squiggly pattern, and yours was a lot closer to a straight line than mine. So, but again, it's the journey. And like you eloquently said yet again from Mr. Stansel, you know, that everyone has a story. take the time to listen. Now that I said that out loud, it reminds me of a woman when I first started teaching in Arizona. She was working in the cafeteria, and I had my first period class for whatever reason was in the cafeteria because they had no place to put me. And I remember talking to her. And one day I asked her, I was like, I know this is rude and all, but how old are you? And she's like, well, I'm 80. And this was in 1996. And I was like, oh my gosh, what was your favorite decade? And she goes, actually, it was the 20s because, women got the right to vote and we were getting more responsibilities and we could do all these things in society. And it was really cool. And just talking to people, getting to hear their stories. And I never thought about it until you said it and Mr. Sansel said it to you. And that lady just popped into my head. And I looked at her and I'm just like, but you don't seem like you're 80 years old. She goes, because I still work. I'm always doing something. And like, even though I jokingly tell the kids and on the podcast, oh, I only have 3 years left before I can retire. That just means from this job,
Right.
from being a teacher. Like, first of all, my wife is never going to let me, sit on the Barca Lounger and drink Coca-Cola and watch TV all day. It's not going to happen. I'm looking
No.
for that second career. I don't know what that is. Maybe podcasting, maybe not. Hey, maybe working for Elena. Who knows? Anything's possible.
Yeah.
But but it's a second career. It's a second act. It's something else. This has to come to an end because you just your time comes and things pass you by. I even find it hard to believe sometimes that I can still relate to these kids. I don't listen to their music. I don't,
Right.
TikTok. I don't do all of the things that they do, but yet somehow on a human level, I'm still able to interact, communicate, make a difference, and that's what it's all about. And like you said, when the light bulb goes out and you haven't done that anymore, then that's life telling you it's time to move on. It's time to try something else. And that's it. It's just trying something else and reinventing yourself. And, you, you can't give up. You can't just say,
No.
okay, that's it. That's my career. And now I'm done. No, I want to try something else. And
Exactly.
I obviously have made a difference, and it's amazing. Again, like I said, I've done nearly 40 podcasts in 5 years, and the fact that these kids, yourself included, want to come back, talk to me, tell their story, try to help out these kids of today figure out life, and again, you and I are probably a lot closer in understanding than us and these kids because of where they are with social media and technology and ChatGPT, like you mentioned, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I try to tell them that all the time. And my niece, especially, she's 16, and I'm like, eventually it's going to catch up. Eventually, a teacher is going to go, you didn't write that. Eventually, a teacher
Hmm.
is going to go, this just isn't the writing of this level, and they think that they can outsmart us and they think that this technology is going to make life easier for them. But eventually, it catches up to you like everything else.
Yeah.
Yes, it helps, but it also in the long run hurts. Because when you have to sit down to take, I don't know, let's call it the SATs, the ACTs, the GREs, the MCATs, the LSATs, you're not
Hmm.
using ChatGPT to answer those questions.
Nope,
You
not at
know,
all. No,
it's
or when you're interviewing for a job, ChatGPT is not going to be there to answer the job interview questions. They want to get to know you as a person, and um,
exactly. Hey,
yeah.
speaking of which, I just thought of of another question. Have you noticed a lot more interaction with parents and their adult children with what you do, like trying to get scholarships and do these things? Or are these kids doing it themselves? Like, are you seeing it shifting from parents doing it from the kids?
So it's a combination. I would say at my time at Lynn, there were a lot of helicopter moms that would intervene. But it was always my goal to bring it back to the student and say, like, hey, like, I'm happy to talk to you, but I also want
Right,
Jeremy to
their
be on the
input.
phone as well.
Yeah, okay, good. Good for you.
Or with like the scholarships. And I was actually teaching one of my colleagues about this too, because this mother kept calling, and I said, you know what? I go, we need to get in the habit of when a parent's calling about the scholarship, you need to say, "Oh, actually, I need your student to call," because otherwise, how are they going to learn
Right.
if the parent keeps calling and emailing and texting for them? Like no, they need to learn how to pick up the phone and ask the question and get the help they need.
Nice. So you're basically retraining the parent because they're used to because obviously this isn't the first time they've done this. If they're
No,
doing
no.
this for their 18-year-old child, they've been doing this since the child was a little kid. So here you all of a
Yeah,
sudden are going, no, we need to retrain you to train the child correctly. Wow. So
yeah.
it is happening. Yeah, because I remember
Oh, yeah.
my buddy Pete, his wife works at a university in Massachusetts, and even 20 years ago, she started telling me, oh my gosh, the parents are, because her job was like helping the kids get jobs out of college.
Oh,
And
nice.
she would be like, the parents would call and this and that. And she was having the same problem 20 years ago. So I can't imagine what it's up to now. And even at the university level, where that's the difference. In elementary, middle, and high school, for the most part, you're still minor children and your parents are supposed to help you with certain things. But once
Right.
you turn 18, once you turn 21, like now it's your responsibility, guys, to be on
Yeah.
track and know what to do. But if you've had mom and dad holding your hand the whole time, it's a little difficult to just turn on the light bulb and go, oh, now it's my turn to do this. So I'm glad to hear
Exactly.
that you're trying to find for yourself and your coworkers little segments of things to say to people to go, yeah, well, we really need Johnny and Susie on the phone because this is really about them. So that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah,
So
trying to push people out of their comfort zone. Otherwise, they're never going to learn.
yeah, well, that's what you said earlier, without a doubt. If
Yeah.
you're not out of your comfort zone, you're not really learning. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So as I end all these podcasts, every time you went to Don Estridge in the very beginning, and they actually had a class where they were teaching you technology, teaching you about the school.
Yes. Oh my
So
gosh, I forgot about that class. Mr. Roland, you just
that's
brought
right,
it,
still
sparked a
there,
memory.
Mr.
He
Rowland,
is?
still that. Yes, he is
Oh
still
my
there.
gosh. Tell him I
Unbelievable.
said hi.
So, as the name on the school says, Don Estridge, do you remember who he was as a person?
So if I remember correctly, he worked with IBM creating the first personal computer. I did it.
Yay, she did it. Yes, very good. Excellent job. Yes, he was
Yeah.
the IBM guru. He supposedly invented the personal computer. It was supposedly invented at Don Estridge, and we have not his original that he invented, but his personal computer that the family donated when they found out that we dedicated the school to their dad. The family donated the computer, so it sits in the front office in a glass case, and you can see what Mr. Proper learned on how to use a computer, the green screen computer. Oh man, brings back a lot of horrible memories of why is this green? Like this makes no sense. But that was the technology back then. So,
Wow.
Elena, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You're such an amazing guest and you have so many great stories, and I'm so grateful for you and all of your success, and many more years of you being positive and helping kids succeed and getting to their dreams of university with the funds that you raise to help these kids go to college. And again, throw it out there. It's what.org for these kids?
Yourcommunityfoundation.org, and you're welcome to reach out to me. Any questions that any of the students have, I'm here to help.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. So wonderful catching up. And I just hope you know how much you made an influence in my life. And I will, you know, you'll
Thank
forever be in my life.
Oh, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind-the-scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.